Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back to finally bring you guys my ARG Philly tournament report. Now, yes, I know I'm super late on this one, and I do apologize ahead of time for this, but definitely had a main reason why I had to wait a little while to actually record this for you guys. But first things first, as you guys didn't know, in case you guys didn't know, I actually attended ARG Nationals, located in Philadelphia, and also, after the tournament, they actually had an ARG Circuit Series event, which was to kick off, like the first event to kick off the next season for ARG. So I did participate in the national tournament. That was on Saturday, and I did play the cross, and unfortunately I came in 25th place, just missed out of the top 16. It was a pretty disappointing day for me, not for the cross, but just for myself as a player, because I felt like my final record was like 4 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws, and yeah, I know the 2 draws is weird. And honestly, I definitely could have I could have played better, especially in one of those rounds that I got a draw in. Because if one of those draws was able to be a win for myself, which could have been possible, I would have most likely made top 16 easily. But you never know how the rest of the tournament could have turned out from then on. But just got to look back and just recover from my mistakes and just grow as a player from there. But yes, one thing though about that weekend is the week prior, upcoming to that weekend for Philly, I actually got sick. I got a little bit of a, I guess, summer cold, really bad inflammation in my throat, where to the point where I really could barely talk. I remember 2 days before I left that Friday night with my buddy Warlock in 36, I couldn't talk. I had to call out of work because I couldn't talk. So it was pretty bad, and I was very close to not going, but I was really looking forward to the event that I really refused to miss it. So during the trip Friday, it was funny. I could barely, talk with with Warliken as he was driving, just because my throat was just straining so bad. And got some NyQuil and Dayquil actually prepared for myself, and all day Saturday it was like that for me. I was struggling to be able to communicate effectively to my opponent. I had a very harsh voice. And it was pretty bad for me, I had like about 3 packs of Halls. I ate all day Saturday. I had Dayquil. I had, a lot of medicine in me just to get through the day. Definitely try not to make excuses, but that medicine was kind of getting to me a little bit, and my throat was frustrating so much that I was kind of going on tilt past round 4, so I was kind of really frustrated with everything, after round 4, and I think that's what led me to make really bad plays and really bad judgment calls in some of my games, which, led to me having the record that I had. So the following Sunday, the day after the Nationals, there was again another Circuit Series event that was going to kick off the next season, and I thought, instead of playing the cross, since I already played the cross, I'd like to rotate between decks, between different tournaments if I can. I decided to play Amon because, one, I was just kind of frustrated with Saturday that I just wanted to, just kind of beat some face in and play very aggro with my Doreens that day. And there's a few things I really wanted to do with Amon, and that's just being very aggressive towards a lot of matchups. And a few things I really like with Amon is that it can be favorable against a lot of matchups that I was anticipating, and it worked out for me in the end. I was able to make top 4 at the ARG Philly event. And also at the same time, I wanted to represent Dark Irregulars, because Dark Irregulars is still one of my favorite clans, and Amon, I felt like, still needs to be represented a little bit more. And I do feel that, Amon is a pretty competitive deck when played right. And definitely when paired with the right matchups too at the same time. So yeah, but definitely had a lot of fun over the whole weekend, and definitely want to give a quick shout out to Team Absolution Vanguard. Great group of guys. Got a chance to meet them again. Team Gradelock, another great group of guys, met again. And definitely shout out to Alfonso of Team Gradelock for making top 16 with Neo Nectar Musketeers. So definitely a great way to represent them. Let me see. Definitely shout out to Jonathan Minham, and all in the other groups from Vanguardians. Got a chance to meet with them, hang out with them a little bit after Nationals. So it was definitely a great time. Yeah, just another great weekend. And here, let me go ahead and break down the ARG Philly tournament for you guys. So in total, there was about 6 rounds that I played, and then cut to top 8. So first round, I played against Shadow Paladin, and one thing I will definitely tell you guys with Shadow Paladin is, although yes, they get played a lot, And you do see them a lot, especially, you know, showing up in competitive tournament scenes. One thing I liked is a lot of the most Shadow Paladin decks, for the most part, I definitely see some different slight variations with a lot of them, especially with their card choices, ratios, and even like their main grade 3s that they center around, or their starters. So, you know, that's one thing I do like with Shadows, is that there isn't just one way to play the deck. There's multiple ways you can play it successfully, and it's proven that. So this particular build actually ran David as a starter. He still ran the Revenger lineup, but he ran David as a starter, and I think he ran like primary Blast Dark Diablo and Revenger Abyss as his 2 grade 3s. So I thought it was a really good concept. Luckily for me, that he was forced to ride his Blaster Dark Diablo, and he rode a little bit early on game 1. So a main strategy I implemented with Dark Irregulars, and one thing I really like with Barmaid, and why I think Barmaid is one of the best starters in the game, if not the best starter in the game for what it can bring to its respective deck, is I played a really great grade 2 game with this deck. And that's something this deck is really amazing at when given the right cards. So a lot of times I open up something like this, you know, grade 2, I have a Doreen on my rear guard circles, and like a Hell's card. I keep like having Hell's cards constantly every turn, so every turn I just pretty much go Barmaid, target my Vanguard just to like maintain some power, Soul Charge 2, call a Hell's Draw, or Hell's Deal, whatever, Soul Charge 2. So this Doreen column is essentially 27 every single turn, and I'm just keep, you know, pounding my opponent every single turn with this combination. So, you know, I'll purposely not ride my grade 3, stall them out a few turns, and just keep hitting ideal numbers like this to stall out their stride plays and put lots of pressure on them. So, especially if I'm facing a deck that can remove my Doreen and or Barmaid, it's definitely going to be a lot of trouble for them. So I was able to do just that, and luckily he wasn't able to draw his Blaster Dark Revenger Abyss in time to snipe out the Barmaid before I was able to get a lot of value out of it. But I ended up just playing that strategy for both games, and then, you know, I was able to be very successful with it. And because, you know, basically when I do that strategy, eventually my opponent will probably have a lot of grade 3s in hand that he's forced to kind of ride his grade 3 and start calling them from his hand to replace the beaters that, you know, to replace the grade 2s that I was attacking and getting rid of on his field as well. So then at that point I go into the first stride. My first stride usually ends up being Amon, since I usually have at least 12 or more soul to get my like front row plus 9k. So I was able to, you know, push my opponent for game that turn. That I do that, just because usually they're at like 4 or 5 damage, because I keep, you know, putting lots of pressure with my heavy rear guard columns with Doreen and Barmaid working together. So I was able to do that successfully for that first round. Second round I actually faced against William Cole. As you guys may know, he's like one of the admins for Vanguardians, and he was playing D-Robo, and D-Robo can be pretty scary, just, you know, especially with as many grade 3s that they're running in their decks now. But it was a really good game, and went to game 3. I remember the final turn in game 3, he broke-row Daikaiser over the Legion, you know, just as a big push to try and go for game, and luckily I had a perfect guard. And one thing I really like that I felt safe with this deck all day was that I was able to draw my perfect guards in time. So I threw down a perfect guard and prayed that he didn't hit a grade 3, because sometimes you have no choice against D-Robo but to do just that. He hit double triggers, but luckily it was not for game, and no grade 3 in sight, thank God, because if it was, it would have hit me for 3 crit. And then I finally made my big final push the following turn. Although I think he ended up hitting like a 6 damage heal, but my columns were just so huge in power that, you know, he didn't really have enough defense in hand to guard the last few attacks anyway, so you know, thank God for big columns. But yeah, I think I misplayed in one of those games because I like stupidly like got rid of my grade 2 when I was perfect guarding, and I forgot that I needed that grade 2 so I can stride next turn in par with my other grade 1, because I had no other way to stride like grade 3 or grade 1 stride enabler. So I ended up losing that game because of that, because I couldn't use Guild Array. So I definitely learned from that and was mindful for that for the rest of the day. But definitely be careful, guys. Be careful, guys, when you are playing. But I was able to win that game. Round 3, I played against Gold Paladin Blue Flame Liberators, and this is the same guy I actually drew against in I think the same round for Nats. So it was pretty interesting to see him again. That round I did lose, and I'd say it's just one of those uncontrollable rounds that in Vanguard that I can't, you know, I have no control over. That's why I call it uncontrollable round, where, you know, I really felt like I couldn't have played better than I could have. I just did not draw optimal hands to do my combination plays that I needed, and defensively, my hand wasn't really great defensively also. And the fact that I think he did stall me out a turn made all my great threes in my hand essentially dead when it came to striding, so, you know, it was really bad for me. Both games were pretty similar in that sense, so I ended up just losing out that game. Well, you know, really can't help it. There's nothing much you can do, so, you know, if I'm going to take a loss, at least I'll take a loss where I couldn't control the game as opposed to me losing to myself. So so you just move on from that point. So round 4, I end up playing against a Shadow Paladin player. I think he was the Shadow Paladin I made top 8, top 4 in that. I can't remember, but he was running the Clarence Sword variant for Shadows, so it's a non-Revenger build. And honestly, when it comes to a stride-based build, that's where this deck really truly shines, as long as I get the right cards with me. Now, I did, of course, I did a little bit of scouting beforehand. I already saw he was playing that particular deck, so I did. So sometimes, if the matchup is what I like, especially, like, again, when I'm facing a stride-based matchup, I always like to play that grade 2 game strategy, like I mentioned, with Doreen in my rear guards and Barmaid constantly pumping up my rear guards. So I actually did some crazy stuff, like, you know, if I had like a Doreen in a grade 1 and like 2 grade 3s, I'll actually purposely shuffle away my 3s just to try and get more 1s and 2s, just so I can better implement that strategy. So I did just that for both games that I won, and it just worked to perfection. Just was able to do that, pressure tons with Doreen, and eventually I had like 2 Doreens on board with like 4 soul charges a turn. It was just overwhelming for a lot. It was just really overwhelming to deal with. And then first stride, of course, went to Amon to make that final push for game. So yeah, the strategy just worked to perfection for me that round. So I was able to win 2-0. The next round I faced OTT player Tsukiyomi deck, and yeah, the guy, really cool guy, and you know, he was kind of making really bad misplays where he was kind of like taking back moves and stuff. And, you know, I'm usually if my opponent's a, you know, easygoing, nice guy and things, I will let it go. Like, I think he went to his Persona flip stride before his first stride, and I kind of pointed it out, and I kind of let him go back on it. But then again, I also had pretty good defense in my hand. I was an advantage anyway, but, you know, sometimes it's nice to be a nice guy, because afterwards I kind of messed up too, because I went to Gilderay by mistake. And thinking I had enough soul, but I kind of like, I don't know why, I kind of had a brain fart and thought I had enough soul, a short one, but the guy was nice enough to let me go back and, you know, go to a more ideal stride. So again, guys, you know, hey, I think karma can go a long way, and, you know, I think if you're nice to your opponent, they may be nice back, but don't take my word for it. But yes, anyways, it was a good game, good round going into game 3. And like the 2 games I won, it was just that grade 2 strategy I played, preventing him from striding, and just, again, you know, Doreen is honestly like my MVP. Doreen and Barmaid was honestly my MVP all day. Just being able to do that strategy. I was able to force out a lot of damage early on in those 2 games that I won, to where, you know, I just made that final push again on my Amon first stride. So honestly, when it came to my strides, Amon really put in more work than Gilderay for the most part, just because I ended up just going for that grade 2 strategy for the most part all day. So yes, again, guys, this is like my MVP right here. So I ended up winning that round, and then the final round for Swiss, I ended up getting paired up with, I think his name is Scotch. He was running Link Joker Messiah, and he actually came in 2nd place as well on that same tournament. So it was interesting because we were sitting so high up. I think we were sitting in the 3rd pair table-wise, so we kind of figure out the points that we had, and then we looked and we just kind of took notice of the players that were below us points-wise, and we actually decided that if we both draw, we actually still will have enough points guaranteed to make top 8. There's no way someone can beat us out of top 8. So we actually just decided to do that, but we ended up playing out the game anyway. And again, Messiah is a very stride based deck where they can't really do anything unless they stride. So I just, again, MVP right here, grade 2 game, Barmaid Doreen. I ended up just doing it 2 games and ended up just beating him out that way. So yeah, I ended up making top 8, 3rd place overall. Then my top 8 match was actually on stream, and if you guys like actually saw that stream, you can hear the harshness in my voice and how much struggle it was for me to talk all day. So yeah, you know, I had to survive all day with my throat, and I nearly lost my voice in the end of the day. But yeah, top 8 stream, fate against just Shadow Pounding Revenger deck. And I'd say that was definitely one of my most sackiest games, or sackiest rounds all day. So perfect timing, it came in top 8. It was funny, like, if you guys saw the stream, like, game 1, I actually successfully soul charged the Amon crit trigger here. And Judge Bow was the only rear guard in his field, and I had 1 counterblast. I was like, yeah. So I was able to snipe out his Judge Bow early on. And I ended up playing, again, the grade 2 game with Doreen, Hell's Cards, Barmaid, and lots of soul charging. So I think it frustrated my opponent a bit because I noticed that he kind of gave that like frustrating sigh every time I didn't ride grade 3. I just went instantly into more Hell's Cards, and I think I eventually dropped like another Doreen and started putting even more pressure and more damage on board. So it was pretty great. I think eventually he finally rode 3. I think I strode a few times to the point where, you know, I was swinging in with Gilderay, Barmaid, and I had 4 soul charges on Doreen the Thruster. I think I hit like 70 plus, 80,000 plus, crit 2, no 1s or higher. And honestly, guys, like, that's the main reason why I wanted to play him on, just because I wanted to make top 8, be on stream, and live the dream of being able to do that on stream. So hey, I was able to live my dream for a little bit. So that was pretty fun to do. Then game 2, I implemented the same type of strategy. And I think that game 1, my opponent had to G assist also, which I think, you know, definitely gave a lot of frustration for him, which, you know, which is understandable. I was kind of sacking him that game 1 also. Game 2, I think, you know, I don't think he opened very optimal, and I did the same strategy again. I was able to open a Doreen for my rearguard column and just start pushing with Barmaids and everything. I was able to push out a lot of damage, and then I think like a little bit towards the end, like 5-6 turns in, he kind of just picked up his cards and scooped, you know, so he ended up just forfeiting there, you know, because I was able to put a lot of tempo out there, and I think he just had a really bad hand also, because he was just trying his hardest to guard all the columns, prevent damage, and I think it was just frustrating for him because he was trying to play the grade 2 game with me, but my board was a lot stronger than his. To the point where, like, even if he rode grade 3, he only had like a very small cards in hand, and he really couldn't do much, and I had a lot of card advantage at that point just for the amount of pressure I was able to put on him. And yeah, you know, he ended up just, you know, I ended up just winning that round. Then my top 4 game, I think, like, again, you know, I guess karma can be a thing where, you know, top 8 I was kind of sacky, really sacky in that round. Then top 4 I kind of got sacked. Granted, game 1 against the Bluish Flame, it was against Bluish Flames, the same guy I drew against, the same guy I lost to in Swiss, so it's kind of like, I don't know what it is, but it's like Destiny, I have to play the same guy, but he's still a great guy, really great player with his deck, but yeah, game 1, it was pretty back and forth, and I guess you can say, like, he sacked at the end with his glare, but I kind of made a really bad play, and I was kind of going for one of those hard reads where, you know, his triple drive check the previous turn was 3 5Ks. He had 1 mystery card, and he had like 2 interceptors. He was at 4 damage. I swung, and like, let me see. I think he was like 3 damage. I'm trying to remember the scenario. Okay, yeah. I remember he perfect guarded. He discarded a card that I didn't see in his drive check, and then he had 4 cards left in hand, so he had like 3 5Ks and a mystery card. And I hit a critical trigger and gave it to my big column, and he was at 4 damage. He had 2 interceptors. So I kind of went for like the hard read of, you know, maybe if that 1 mystery card is not a second perfect guard, then possibly I could attack the interceptor with my other column and maybe just try and go in for game. So I kind of went for that read because he was kind of hesitant to use the perfect guard, so usually that would mean they don't have a second one. So I was kind of going for that read because even if that mystery card was like a 10k, I would end up bleeding his whole hand, and then I would just maybe put him at 5. But looking back, it was kind of stupid for me to do that because even if it wasn't, because he ended up having a perfect guard, but even if it wasn't a perfect guard, it was a 10k, it still would have been better just to bleed his hand and then just put him to 5, because what happened was I ended up surviving. I was at 4. I ended up surviving that turn, but then I ended up damage checking my last mate in the deck, and I needed Astaroth to Legion. I needed to Legion with Astaroth so I can swing in for the crit because he didn't have a perfect guard. He only had the only cards he drove check with in hand, so I would have been able to like swing in with Legion and crit for game. But I was able to do that. I mean, I guess it was unfortunate I damage checked my last mate, but in hindsight, you know, if I was able to put him at 5 instead of leaving him at 4, I would have been able to push for game regardless. But you know, you never know how the rest of the game could have played out from there. But I kind of went for that hard read. But looking back, it was kind of dumb for me to do that. So I was kind of, you know, beating myself up for that. Then game two, you know, like I opened bad, he opened well, and I was kind of coming back from that little by little. It was back and forth to where, you know, we both had very low hand, where our hand is what was left from our drive checks. I was at 3 damage, and I already knew ahead of time that I had no choice but to no guard the glare if he explosion blues. And out of nowhere, he was able to fish the grade 3 from the skills from top decking, and he did explosion blue, and I no guarded at 3, and he hit a critical trigger for game. So, you know, not much you can do from there. I guess you could say it was pretty sacky on his part, but, you know, I kind of played bad game 1, where I could have probably ended up winning if I, you know, maybe had a better judgment call on that play, on that turnout I was talking about with you guys. And, you know, at the same time, you know, things happen. You know, it could have went either or. But who knows? Because if I actually won that top 4, I would have been paired up against the Messiah player again in finals. And, you know, this deck has an amazing matchup against that deck, as I mentioned in our games that we played. So, you know, who knows? I maybe could have won the Circuit Series, but you never know. So all you can do is keep looking forward and just keep getting better as a player and, you know, moving on from there. But nonetheless, really glad I was able to get another top 4. And it was kind of funny, I got the same mat I got for Richmond, but nonetheless. But really glad I was able to at least represent Amon for a day, for a little bit. And definitely looking forward to more events. But real quick before I let you guys go, I know it's a pretty long video, I do apologize for that. But let me actually go over real quick my build for this deck. And this isn't the exact build that I had for that day. I made a few slight changes afterwards, because there's a few things I actually wanted to change after I was able to test it a little bit more. So first off, of course, for the starter, you have the Barmaid. Again, like I said, this is probably like the best starter in the game for what it can deliver for its respective deck, just based on what I was explaining in the report. But I love this card, She's like one of my new bays along with Doreen, but you know, nothing beats Doreen, right? So grade 3s, of course, you have the 4 Astrots, and I have the 4 Amons now. So, like, again, after that top 4 match, after I, like, soul charged, like, 2 of my Amons and damage checked the last mate, because one of these used to be Amon reverse, I decided just to put the 4th one in, just because, although I like Amon reverse, I actually did not find the need for it a lot of times, and even if I face Aquaforce, I felt like that I still can play a favorable game against them. And honestly, even if I face Aquaforce is just a bad matchup for this deck regardless, so, like, that one card's not going to make a huge difference, I feel. So I decided to just go back to 4-4 just to make sure I have the Legion play available, especially later in the game. So yep, pretty simple. Grade 2s, you have your 4 Hell's Draw, definitely one of the MVPs in the deck just for that double soul charge with Doreen. Really, really great partnership. I'm running the 3 Hell's Nail, excuse me, and 3 Ron Jinlin. So I actually cut down on one of the Hell's Nail just because the counterblasting is really hefty. And I didn't even find myself using it that much. So I felt like the Ron Jinlin was really good, because the 12k really can help make some ideal columns, especially playing that grade 2 game, because being able to have him with a double soul charge boosted by Doreen for 24 against a 9k Vanguard is very, very strong. So it also just makes for a good Barmaid target, so you can make ideal numbers without boosting. So I definitely was very happy with that, with this little slight change. Then for grade 1s, your 4 Flag Breaker, definitely don't want to change this. The unflipping is very huge, and, you know, again, I'm very happy I was able to draw these enough in my hand against a lot of my matchups. So definitely like the Flag Breaker, definitely don't want to change that. 4 Hell's Deal, definitely got to run him as a 4 of. And of course 4 of, like, one of my favorite cards in the game, one of my bays in the game, 4 Doreen the Thruster. Definitely like my MVP of the day. And then you have your 3 Succubus of Pure Love, your Stride Enablers. Simple as that. And then for triggers, your 4 Amon crits. One thing you gotta be wary of, that part of my mistakes I was making is that I kind of took my counterblast for granted. To where, like, you know, even if I use this skill when I could and use up all my counterblast, I was like, okay, well, I have a Flag Breaker, I can unflip 1, and then, you know, my opponent will probably give me another damage. I found that my opponent was playing around my damage a lot, to where they either, if I end up using all my counterblast and I'm at like 3 or 4 damage, they purposely won't give me the other damage because they're afraid of Guild Array with Barmaid, which I actually needed the following turn. So, and there are times where I kind of just stupidly did it blindly without thinking, and then I didn't, you know, they end up just killing my opponent ended up killing a dead grade 3 on their field anyway. So definitely be mindful of how you use this. But nonetheless, still Amon's follower. I actually use this as a beater sometimes, and it still partners really well with your regular Amon. And but like I said, you know, you definitely got to be very, very choosy, I guess. I can't think of the word right now, but choosy on when you use the skill. But still, nonetheless, amazing card. 4 Dark Knight and Nightmare Land, nothing much more there. And the 4 heals, of course, nothing much there. Now, the one change I actually was contemplating on. Now, of course, I still have the Hysteric Shirleys in the deck just because I think draw triggers are still great in Dark Irregulars to be able to continue drawing into more options and building more hand, which is really good for this deck. And the double soul charge is really nice just because I don't have to wait for generation break or anything like that. And it's definitely very useful because that 1 extra soul charge definitely played clutch for me when I went from 13 to 15 to get me that 15 soulful Gilderay. Now there is the stand trigger, which I honestly didn't even know about prior to the tournament because I didn't really care about the stand triggers, but the stand trigger is actually really good just really because of the unflippability, which is very huge because like I said, a lot of times good players will play around your counterblast you know, for Dark Irregulars, especially later in the game when you need that 1 extra counterblast to really make that big push. So I'm actually just test out that stand trigger. But for now, Hysteric Shirleys are still great for the reason that I mentioned. And for the record, I've never ever decked out with Dark Irregulars. You know, despite the draw triggers and all this intense soul charging. So something to also keep in mind, just for me personally. And then for strides, it's pretty straightforward. I am running 2 of my Lump Tempest. Definitely an amazing stride just because the extra card draw is really huge for the deck and the soul charge is really nice. And then you have your 4 Gilderay. So I think it was very rare that I used it twice, but it was like a really good game back and forth with my opponent. But usually 1 time was enough just to make that push for game, him with Barmaid. But although I don't like the lore for Gilderay, he's still a very strong card and he's needed, very needed. It's funny, one thing I say with Gilderay, although I hate the lore of Gilderay and what he represents lore-wise, he's kind of like that, you know, that superstar player on your basketball team that everyone hates, but you still need him to win. LeBron James, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, so definitely got to keep him at 4. And then you have the 1 Amon Stride, again, was my MVP. I was actually thinking about just playing a second one, but honestly, I think the 1's just fine, because I usually use it for that 1 strategy that I mentioned to you guys. If I play grade 2 game, I have 15 soul anyway, I'll go for a stride. When my opponent's at high damage, I'll just push for game. But I never found the need to really go for the second part. And then as a 1-of, I actually did 1 change. I just added this in the deck because I forgot all about this card. But I saw one guy playing it. And there was actually a situation, you know, in my locals after the tournament, after ARG, that I tested that this actually turned out okay. Really paired up with Ron Jinlin. You can maybe fix your columns, ideally. Like if your opponent already has a high damage count, where, you know they're going to guard this regardless, you can kind of go into this and maybe just soul charge anyway, fix your numbers, maybe hit a bigger number. So situationally, he's not bad. Well, yeah, there you go, guys. That is my tournament report. I'm sorry this is a long video, but definitely a lot of things to say and a great weekend, and definitely looking forward to more events. So yes, as always, guys, don't forget to like this video. It's always appreciated. Like for Amon, like for Doreen, like for Barmaid, serving you up them drinks on that platter. And don't forget to subscribe. And always, later.